if the father just pushed him into it and he had to know moves and backgrounds, I mean, that's amazing. If he didn't have an earpiece in his ear and they just go on the fly, that's not an easy thing to do. So I give him credit for just jumping in. And later on, we see that Shane pretty much did the same thing. He was the referee,
Right.
he was the announcer, he was this, he was that, blah, blah, blah. So they're paying their dues, and I love that. But it just was, to me, it was heartbreaking. He just looked so uncomfortable speaking about his past. And he's a great actor. We all know this. So is he doing this to get sympathy, or was that the real Vince McMahon that we never get to see? Not so much the adult Vince. I felt bad for the child Vince. Because no child should have to, beg for love from their parents.
Right.
It's a horrible thing. I tell my kids I love them 50 million times a day, and it never gets old for me. I will never not accept a hug or a kiss or a snuggle. Like, I love that kind of stuff, and I know everybody's different.
Yeah, and even in buying the company from him, I mean, they're expecting him to fail, right? He purchases his business, and the deal is, hey, you miss a payment, and the company goes back to me. He's saying they're expecting him to fail the whole time. So, and Linda used the analogy of robbing Peter to pay Paul, that they were basically just using the funds that were coming in from the shows to make the payments on the business, and they would eventually lead up to starting to make the money, but they were expecting him not to move on, and he kind of pried the business away from Gorilla Monsoon, which again, I've heard that over the years. They showed his trajectory from the announcer who he stepped in when they needed him, and they said he wasn't very good as an announcer, but he had some presence, and he could kind of tell the stories. To they didn't have faith in him as the owner, and they thought he was going to fail and not make the payments, and you were right that he didn't have that same Mr. McMahon confidence and aura as he was explaining the early year.
He didn't have his swag on. He was very timid to me when he was speaking. And when they showed him, doing the commentary and stuff, I guess those were later episodes or later broadcasts, because I thought he did really well. And
I always loved him as a commentator.
From what they showed, I don't know if they showed his very first, try, or if the father just pushed him into it and he had to know moves and backgrounds. I mean, that's amazing. If he didn't have an earpiece in his ear and they just go on the fly, that's not an easy thing to do. So I give him credit for just jumping in. And later on, we see that Shane pretty much did the same thing. He was the referee, he was the announcer, he was this, he was that, blah, blah, blah. So they're paying their dues, and I love that. But it just was, to me, it was heartbreaking. He just looked so uncomfortable speaking about his past. And he's a great actor. We all know this. So is he doing this to get sympathy, or was that the real Vince McMahon that we never get to see? Either way, that was my favorite episode of the 6. Yeah. So empathy for him, felt really sad for him as a child. We all know how he turned out to be as an adult, but going back, I didn't know that stuff. So that was intriguing to me.
Can I say in episode 1, though, I thought that for all the flack he gets when we talk about him, Hulk Hogan came off amazingly. I thought this was the best Hulk Hogan has ever looked on a documentary. Okay. I thought this was the best, retelling of stories that we've seen him in recent years. Mm-hmm. Not, with the embellishments, just retelling, things that had happened with footage, like they showed what happened as he's saying it. I thought Hulk Hogan was awesome in episode 1 because it showed his trajectory and his growth as well, alongside Vince, and how Vince plucked him as the replacement for Bob Backlund, who was his dad's chosen champion, the All-American boy. Well, he wanted the larger-than-life superhero, and he had Hulk Hogan, whom he had met years before when he was under Sterling Golden.
There was one, I think one part that I caught Hogan in a lie, and I can't remember off the top of my head because everybody else said something different than Hogan said. And damn it, I wish I would have wrote it down. I don't.
Well, if it was followed by Tony Atlas, I automatically will say I'm on Team Hogan.
Well, let me tell you something about Tony Atlas. I thought he came off the best.
See, I was complete opposite.
No, I thought Tony was extremely honest with his answers because it seemed to me like everyone else was kissing ass. Except for Bret Hart. Bret Hart,
which we predicted.
We noted from episodes past that he does not care anymore. He's just whatever. But I think Tony, to me, was the straightest of shooters. He told it like it is. If you watch every single episode, there are instances where people give answers and Tony's just like, this is how it is and blah, 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 and did not agree with the rest of the cast. So I thought that Tony came off the best out of all of them.
The one instance I guess we can mention later on that where he did give his best answer.
Okay, well we can bring
hit on that. But yeah, but that was where when they did play the different people, I'd love to see which one you meant because I thought Hogan was great. I thought everything he said was awesome in that first episode.
I'm not saying he wasn't a good interview in this. I think there was one thing where I said out loud that was bullshit. And I can't remember. Damn it. I should have wrote it down. I can't remember what it was because I had heard different. Maybe as we're recapping, it'll pop up in my head.
Quickly, what did you think about when they went over the Stossel and the Richard Belzer incidents leading up to WrestleMania 1?
Okay. So, John, I remember that happening. And I remember the slap. I didn't know about like the lawsuit, how the lawsuit played out and stuff, but I do remember that happening. Belzer, I didn't know that he literally fell and hit his head and was bleeding. So that was interesting to see because I had no clue that even happened. Because again, I wasn't into it back then. Yeah. So I wouldn't have watched these late night shows to see him on there because I wasn't a fan. But when they showed the clip and the blood was on the floor, I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But looking at it, if they looked at it through today's eyes, right? If that was to happen on TV today, I don't think that the WWE would lose that case because he takes that fall so poorly on a stage that's not made, like a hard surface that's not made for a wrestling fall, or you know what I mean? He doesn't know how to take it. So of course he cracked his skull.
Yeah, but one could argue that they didn't tell him beforehand, I'm going to put you in this whatever move. And, you should, common sense, like tell the guy, are you okay with doing this? Because, even in today's world, there are so many Karens out there. You point a finger and they'll, oh my God, that person touched me or blah, blah, blah. If they would have went over it beforehand and said, listen, I'm going to put you in this and just pretend to sell or whatever, however you want to word it, it would have been so much better. But I think he admittedly said he wasn't aware of what was going to happen. And I don't know if he legit got hurt and just fell. Like, I don't know if he was trying to sell it like it was death, but he hit his head. So if Hogan didn't touch him, he wouldn't have fell.
Yeah. Hogan's book, he tells the whole thing. It's a great story. It's the full thing if from the beginning of the day, because like Mr. T was very weird leading up to that whole interview, which is why that segment developed the way it did. So like the full story, which we don't have time to cover, fascinating lead up.
Okay. Maybe that's a future YouTube gimmick week.
Yeah, to watch that whole segment. If we watch the Stossel incident and that one back to back, that would be a great future episode.
Make a note right now.
I will, absolutely will.
Okay.